Hey gang, welcome back to the channel, and in this video we're going to be tackling NextJS incremental static generation by creating a YouTube gallery app. Now this YouTube gallery app was actually in Colby Fayek's 50 React projects that you can find in the link below. I used that for inspiration, and I'm going to show you how to use incremental static generation so that you can keep your sites fast while still getting fresh data where possible. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure to stick around. So we're in a standard Next.js application, and what I've done is removed all of the standard homepage code that comes when you use Create Next App, and I've installed Chakra UI as I'm going to use that as my framework library for the CSS. Now, to use static generation, what you're going to do is use export async function get static props. And then we will return something inside of here, but for now, this is what we're going to use. So there's a small difference between standard get static props and incremental static generation. And the only difference is in the return functionality, you can set how long you want before a revalidation happens in seconds. So let's say that you know that every 6 hours, new data is coming in. You could set your revalidation to be maybe every 3 or even 6 if you don't care that the data has to be there immediately. This allows you to have an extremely fast website or application, but also get that latest data without having to rely on, say, client-side code when someone visits a site or anything like that. So this is really useful for stuff that doesn't really update very often. If you go to my website, jamesperkins.dev, and look at the YouTube page, which is in the top of the link, that is all built with static generation. So every time I publish a video, the next time somebody visits the site, it will kick off, and then the person after that visits the site, or if that person happens to navigate and come back, a new video will appear and they'll be able to watch it on my website. So there's the small introduction. Let's actually get into writing some code. So inside of this, we're going to need a couple of things. First, we're going to need a playlist. So we'll call this my playlist. And I'm going to show you how to get that in a second. And we're going to put that in an environmental variable. And we'll call this playlist ID. And we're also going to need an API key. And the API key comes from when you sign up for the ability to use Google's API. So I will also show you which API key that is. So then we're going to need a request URL. So for now, we can just say request URL. And then we'll have something in here. For now, we'll just have an empty string, and we'll fill that in as we go. And then we're going to need to actually handle the request and the response here. We'll use fetch, but for now, we're just going to leave that alone because I don't want to put it in there and then Next.js try and attempt to do it. So in the return, you're going to need to put props, which is the standard return for when you're using get static props or get server-side props. And we're going to use results. And then for now, we'll just put test in here. And then we can hit comma. And underneath here, so underneath the props, we're going to have something called revalidate. And if you type revalidate, in here, this is where you tell it how many seconds that you actually want. So the props here will be on one line, and then revalidate will be on a separate line, but still in the return functionality. And you can put as many seconds as you want. So for this example, we're going to do 10. So every 10 seconds is going to look for new updates, even though I know for a fact that I don't have that many videos, although I wish I could upload that much. So now we have the basic functionality of a get static props. We're here, we're making a request, which will come underneath here, and then we're going to return whatever comes from that, and we're going to ask it to revalidate every 10 seconds. So the way get static props works again is that it works at build time. So it's not running at runtime. It's not doing anything like that. It's at build time, which means every time this application is built, this functionality will run. Now with revalidation, what it does is on this page, it says, hey, somebody just visited the site and it's been longer than X. We should revalidate if there's any fresh code. If there's not, okay, we're good. We won't have to rebuild the site. Oh, there is new data. Let's rebuild the site and publish that for the next end user. So now we've gone through that. Let's show you how to get the playlist ID for your YouTube channel of choice and also this API key. So I'll meet you on YouTube's website and of course in Google's API. So here we are on my YouTube channel. Now what I've done is selected videos here, and you want to select play all. Now this might seem really strange, but if you right click on this and copy the link address and paste it into a new window, here is the playlist ID that you're gonna want to use to get every single video that you've ever uploaded. It's not readily available and obvious, but you can get it from this play all, right click, copy link address, and then paste that in, and it will give you this UU, and then it's usually your channel ID afterwards. So go ahead, copy that, and drop that in your .env file. Now let's move on to getting a YouTube API key. So here we are in the Google Cloud Platform. Now I have a 2 here, so I'm just going to select the YouTube channel feed because that's what I'm using. And what you want to do first is click Enable APIs and Services, and then you'll want to type in YouTube. In here, you'll see YouTube Data API v3, and that's the version that you want to enable. And once you've enabled it, you can click Manage API, click on Credentials, and then give yourself a API key. So to do that, you're going to click Create Credentials, API key, and then you're going to grab this API key and drop that into your .env, and we can move on with making some more code. So before we get started, we should actually look at how to use the YouTube Data API and make it do what we want, because you do have access to all these different things here. So we're going to be using this playlist items, which gives us the ability to use essentially a playlist to return a bunch of videos. So we're going to use the list option here, and this will give us the ability to pull back a bunch of stuff. So we're going to be using snippet, and this gives us just small pieces of information about videos. Then on top of that, we're going to paste in our playlist ID here. So let's just grab that and drop it in. And just with those 2 pieces of information, we should be able to execute this. And as you can see now, we're getting a 200 with a bunch of results. So if you click this show code, it'll actually give you the sort of curl command here of what we need. So we're actually going to take this and we're going to use this and make some slight modifications in our code. So go ahead, copy this down, and I'll meet you back in Visual Studio Code. So here we are in Visual Studio Code, and I'm just going to paste in that giant URL that we used before. And then we're going to make some changes to this so that it works the way we expect. So first, I'm just going to make this the const that we have here instead of having the playlist ID here, in case I need to change it for some reason in the future. Then I don't have to make any code changes. I can just update this one piece of code. Then for the API key, I'm just going to have to drop in our API key here. So $ API underscore key. And then that will give us the ability to do the same query that we just saw on the internet. But I also want to make one more change to this query, and that is I want to add a maximum result that comes back, because I only think that people care about the top 15 results. So just to add to the query, we'll just do another @ here and do max results equals 15. So now that gives us a fully workable query that we can use. So now we need to actually make the requests using fetch. and then return those in properties. So what we can do here is underneath, we can do another const and do response equals await fetch and then request URL. And then we can do results is equal to await response.json. And that'll give us a nice JSON response. And then what we can do here is take these results and we're going to do results.items. And that just saves us one property on the other side. Then we're going to leave our revalidate at 10, hit save, and now this is essentially ready to go. So what I'm going to do is just throw in a quick div and say test. And then what we're going to do is just put in our results here. And we can then do a console.log results and see what comes back from our results to make sure it works. So I'm going to launch this application and I'll meet you on the web. Okay, so here we are on the website. It says test in really small writing, but I actually care about what's being logged out. So now you can actually see that we have the name of my channel. We have what this description of this video is. We have thumbnails, we have resource IDs, and we have the title, etc. So essentially we have everything that we could possibly need to actually make a YouTube gallery. So now we actually need to build a component that will handle playing YouTube videos. So I'll meet you back in Visual Studio Code. So back in the code here, I'm going to create a new component here called YouTube player.js. And inside of that YouTube file is where we're going to create the ability to create a YouTube player. So the first thing we need to do is actually install a new package. So we're going to do yarn add, and it's React player. I'm going to use React player to do essentially the heavy lifting of making videos available in our NextJS application. So we're going to import React player. And that's going to come from React-player. And we're actually just going to import YouTube because we only are planning to use the YouTube player. So we don't want to import everything and waste our time. We're then going to import box from Chakra UI, which is essentially a div, but that's going to handle our wrapping of our player. So we're going to create a const here called YouTube video player. And this is going to take in properties. And I know that we need at minimum the URL ID to actually make this play. And one cool thing that the React player has the ability to say whether or not a video is playing or not. So we're going to take these props, which I'm going to pass in the ID that came from our request on YouTube here. So we're going to pass in this ID, and we're going to use that ID to essentially make it available to play. And we're also going to pass in a playing props, and we're going to set that equal to the props. So we're basically deconstructing the props that we're going to pass in. And then we're going to make a URL, which is just going to be the YouTube URL. So https www.youtube.com/watch, and then the video is equal to $equal to ID. Make sure we're using backticks here and put the equals in the right spot. Now this will give us the ability to pass into the React player the video that we want. So now what we can do is return the box that we imported at the top. And we're going to give this a class name because we actually have to do some styling that is easier in CSS than it is in Chakra UI. And then we're going to import the React player, and we'll give it a class name equal to React player. And then we need the URL, which is going to be equal to the URL above. And then we're going to also do playing. I'm going to pass that prop in. And then we need the width to equal 100% and the height to equal 100% as well, so that it fits into the space. So that is the React player fully built out. So now this is finished, we should export this out. So we can just do export YouTube video player and hit save. So now we have this, we can use it in our index.js to actually display a video to the user. So let's test to make sure this works first by just doing one video, and then we'll create the gallery part. So the first thing we need to do is actually import our components. So we can just do import YouTube video player, and that's going to come from our components / YouTube video player. And we also need use state because we're going to have two states here. So let's do use state from React. And the two use states we're going to have is the current video. So current video, set current video. And we're going to use state and we're going to set that to results 0. So the first one that comes through. And then we're also going to have another const here called playing and set playing. And those are going to handle if it's playing or not. So we'll just do a truthy false here. So we'll set it to false from the beginning. So now we have that. What we should do is take the YouTube video player. So we can just do a return. And inside of the return, we can do YouTube video player. And then we need the ID and we also need playing. So the playing is going to be set to false. So we can just use the state we have here. And then for the ID, we're going to need current video. But we're actually going to need a specific part of current video. So we're going to do current video dot snippet dot resource ID dot video ID, and that will give us the video's ID that we can use with our URL. So now we have this, what we should be able to do is hit save, load up the NextJS app, and test to make sure that the YouTube video player works as expected. So I'll meet you on the other side where we can see if our video is working. Okay, so we kind of have a video. It's the full width. When we play it, it plays really tiny here. So we do have a few things to fix, but we know that YouTube video player is actually working as expected. So let's do a bit more work to make it look normal, and we'll go from there. So back in the code, the first thing we want to do is add a couple of things here to make our React player actually work the way we expect it. So we're going to have a player wrapper, and we're going to set the position to relative and the padding on the top to 56.25%. Now this will make sure that it's at 1280 by 720 of the sort of like the ratio. And this is actually in the React player GitHub notes, just so you can find it in the future. So we're going to set the position to absolute and top to 0, left to 0. And at that point, that should fix some of the issues that we've had, because we already have these class names here: player wrapper, React player, player wrapper, React player. So now back in our index.js files, we can actually start creating a bit more of our sort of CSS to kind of hold this all in. So what we'll do is we're going to create a box, and that's going to come from Chakra UI, and we're going to set the width equal to 100%. And we're going to use mx is equal to auto, and that will kind of handle the top section, and my, which is margins on the top and bottom, we will set to 4. And then we can kind of wrap our player here in that. And then we want kind of a heading too that can go inside of this box. And this box is going to wrap the whole thing. So we'll do a heading here. And the heading should be from Chakra UI. and we'll do a MY of 8 to push us from the top, and we'll align it into the center. And this will make it look pretty snazzy. So now we can do YouTube video gallery. And then before we do anything else, let's just add one more box here with a max width equal to 720 pixels. And we'll do MX equal to auto again. So anything inside this box will be centered. We'll add padding of 4, border radius equal to large, and then we'll add a box shadow like it's 1999, and we'll add a margin of 8, and then we'll close this box here. So what I'm going to do now is we're actually going to just launch this and make sure that our YouTube video player works as expected, and then we'll do like a side-by-side where we'll start coding out some changes. Okay, so we've launched it now, and now we actually have like a nice little bordered YouTube video player that when we hit play, it plays correctly and we don't have to worry about anything else. So now let's start doing some side-by-side comparisons here. So let's go ahead and do this, and we'll get rid of this. And there we go. Like now we have like a side-by-side that we can make some edits here and then hit save over here, and we can see this all come together. So underneath this box here, which is the one that wraps our player, this is where we're going to create sort of our simple gallery that we can use, that a user can select something and then use it. So one powerful thing about Chakra UI is it has this simple grid that allows you to essentially create a grid based upon the size of the screen. So for a small screen, we're going to have 1 column. For a medium screen, we're going to have 2. And for anything larger than that, we'll have 3. And then we can add some space around each of our items. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this results here that we have here and actually do something with them. So we're going to map over the results. So we're going to do results and results.map. Then we're going to make the variable named video, and this video is going to be what we sort of present to the user. And then inside of here, we're going to do a return function, and we're going to return a box here, and we'll give it a key, and the key will be the video.id, and we'll give it a margin of 4. So we're going to use NextJS image to do our image handling, and what we're going to do is take the source, and we're going to say video.snippet.thumbnails.maxres.url. So that's going to give us the maximum resolution URL that is available. And before we do that, let's make sure we import next. So we just do import image from next image. And we also want to actually shut the server down really quick, hit save, and we're going to create a new next.config.js file. And inside of that, we're just going to give it the URL that we want to use for images. So it's modules.exports. And we can actually make this a little bigger here. So just do that. And then inside of our object, we're going to have images. And inside of that, we're going to have domains. And the one domain we're going to have in our array is i.ytimg.com. And that's it. And that will give us the ability to use the images from the YouTube domain. So now we can actually run our server again. So we do yarn dev. And it will probably... We made a mistake there. It should be modules. It should be module. So we should run npm dev now, and everything should work fine over here. And we'll probably get some error messages because we haven't set the image height yet, so that's fine. So let's do that. So let's hide this sidebar again. That's not the right. Let's hide the sidebar. And then we're back here in our images here. So now we can make our index a little different. So we're going to use the width equal to 1280 and the height equal to 720. And then we'll give it an alt, which the alt for ours will be video.snippet.title. Now if we hit save, so as you can see, we now have all of our images loading in correctly. The only problem with this is we don't actually know what the video is called or how to watch it ourselves. So now what we can do is add a heading underneath. So we'll do heading, and that comes as an H5 we'll use for this. It's quite a small heading. We'll do a font size of small, and we'll text align equal to left, and then we'll set the number of lines equal to 1, which means that it'll only show one line and then it'll cut off, and we'll add a margin at the bottom of 2, and then we'll import that from the video. So it's video.snippet.title. So now if we hit save, now we get a nice little title underneath, which is a bit better, but now you still can't click here and load a different video. So what we should do is underneath our heading, create a button that we can use. So we'll do center, and then we'll do button. Just make sure center did import from Chakra, because it has a tendency of not always working for me. There we go. Save. I am aware that this is currently broken. Okay, so now we have this button. So what we can do for the button is do mx is equal to auto, and then we want to essentially make this like, I don't know, YouTube red. So we'll just use red as the color scheme, equal to red. Then we want to do a few things on click. So the on click here is going to do two things. It's going to set the current video to the video that someone selects when they click this button. We're going to set the playing to true so the YouTube video actually starts playing. So to do that, in line, you can create a arrow function here, and let me just move this onto another line and say on click is equal to, and then we can do set current video to video. So that will set the current video to the video that's currently in this map. And then underneath that, we also want to set playing equal to true. And now that should give us the ability, if we've coded correctly here. Red is not defined. That is true. That should be a string. There we go. And then let's just give it a name. So let's say play now. Okay, so now we have this button. So if we click this, in theory, this should start playing the next video, which it does. And if we scroll down and click this one, slight problem is that we actually have to like click this and then scroll all the way up to make it work. So to fix that, what we can do is add a quick change here. We'll just create another sort of const outside of our function, and we'll call this scroll top, and we'll set this equal to window 2. And then, if I remember correctly, it's top 0 and then comma behavior equal smooth. And I think I added too many open and closes to our scroll top there. And then we can just add this to our on click. So in theory now, if I scroll all the way down and select this video, that didn't work. I think I can't spell. Indeed, I cannot. This should be scroll 2, scroll 2. There we go. And there we go. So now, when we click the button, it scrolls up and down based upon that. So that's really the end of the video. If you deploy this now and put it in for sale and deploy a new video, what will happen is the next time somebody visits, it will then update this with another statically generated page, and they can continue to click and play videos however they wish, and they can go off to YouTube if they so wish. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure to drop it a like. Make sure to check out Colby's 50 React projects because they're super awesome. And until next time, see ya!